I was in a band called the Starvin' Band. And they played Al's Bar No Talent Night probably 100 times. And Girl George was the first person we met. And Girl George had a retinue of songs written about Al's Bar, written about downtown LA.
You better sing too, and clap along.
Downtown Thursday night, no talent night. Oh yeah, yeah. Al's Bar, anything goes, oh yeah. So that was like this weird mix at Al's Bar, because it's like this punk rock bar, but here's like the queen of the hippies. She's there playing these like really weird psychedelic redneck songs. She did open mic nights 7 nights a week. Thursday was Al's Bar. And there was people that would follow her. They would come see George on Thursday, go see George in Hollywood on Friday. You know, there's a lot of people at the American Hotel that were like gonna make it. People move to Hollywood, I'm an actor, I'm gonna make it, I'm a musician, I'm gonna make it. 5 years later, they don't make it and they go back to where the fuck they're from. You know what? George is like, it's not that she's gonna make it, she is. She's George. People would come to No Talent Night to rehearse their bitchin' new band, and people would just be hanging out talking. You had to get their attention. I remember this guy getting up doing some songs, and he was, you know, he was a pretty boy, and he had people there from Hollywood. And I remember he had a British accent, and he's like, "Could you guys shut the fuck up? I'm doing some serious stuff here." And people laughed. They openly laughed and heckled this guy. "Go back to Liverpool, Ringo," because you didn't get it. But No Talent Night drew a lot of crazy people. They had this guy, Larry. And Larry would get up and he would say the word Dada over and over again. Da, 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 Dada, Dada, da, da. And then one day, Larry got up and he started reading the U.S. Constitution. And it was boring. And finally, like some drunk frat boy from USC got up there to like kind of mock him. And that was it. No way do you dare interfere with this guy doing this. We can heckle him, but you're coming from the outside and you can't interfere with this. You don't even get it. You don't understand that this is art. That was what No Talent Night was about. It was like, this is as good as it gets and we're going to do our thing. I was in the Starvin' Band and I couldn't play a music instrument to save my ass. I couldn't sing, but they were my buddies and we hung out and they wrote great songs and played guitar. They were substitute teachers, so the next morning they might be hungover and get called and they might not. And I would get up on stage with them and make a painting. You know, they'd walk in with their guitar cases and I'd walk in with my easel and I'd make these terrible abstract paintings. I wanted to be the next Willem de Kooning. My price was the paintings $40 and I inevitably sold them. And you know, I was actually at a party and there was one on the wall. This lady's like, "Oh, I bought this at this wild party years ago." And I was like, "Oh dear." At No Talent Night, I saw a band called the Gargantuans, and they did this cover of My Generation, and people climbed up the steel earthquake beams in Al's Bar, and they stage dived from the beams. It was just so electric. Gargantuans, never heard of them before or since. They had a chick playing trash cans as the drums. It was just nuts. I can tell you the greatest band I ever saw was called JFKFC. And their logo was JFK's face in the Colonel Sanders logo. I bought the shirt and I sat there and I remember thinking, oh my God, this must have been what it was like to see the Beatles at the Cavern Club. Oh my God, this band is so great. Never saw them before, never heard from them since. So it's not necessarily the great bands that played, but there were just these lightning in a bottle moments. Nirvana played here. They opened for Clawhammer. And if there were 20 people, counting some of the band members, who saw them, I'd be shocked. I did not see it. I saw many bands play, oh, that's a big band, it's an important band. They just got signed to some label. On Valentine's in 1987, Love Tractor played. And that's when the fire marshal busted it and shut down Al's Bar. There were so many people to see Love Tractor. But really, that's the band that signed with the record label. That's what I learned at Al's Bar, is you could see the greatest fucking band, but everybody was there to see the next band that had just got signed to Interscope. With the LA riots, people were really afraid to go outside of their suburban enclaves. It really had a psychological effect on the structure of the city. A lot of rents plummeted downtown, and there was nothing new happening. There was no capital coming in to finance clubs or restaurants or anything. By the mid-90s, everybody had kind of come downtown. They'd done Al's Bar. They already knew it. And in LA, it's like, I've been there, I've done that. Why do I need to go back? When Alberto opened the clubhouse, it was the first new thing downtown. And it was one of those things where you had to know about it. There was no advertising for the clubhouse. There was no publicist. But you could show up and Beck would perform right after he had become big. Weird celebrities would just show up at weird times. At one end of this narrow old warehouse was a stage, and then there were booths from like a restaurant, and then there was a bar buried deep in there, and they sold dollar tecates. And then there was actually built into the clubhouse a second level. This thing was really weird and adventurous, and it was built by set designers who Alberto knew from the film industry. It was not built to code. If there was a fire in the clubhouse, you were going to die, but you were going to die at the coolest place in the world. They started hanging old antique cars off of the building, and then a bowling alley was closing, and they put a giant bowling pin on the roof. And then finally, they got cited. It was a short-lived moment, but it brought a lot of oomph back to the neighborhood. For 5 years, on the ground floor space of the American Hotel was Deep River Gallery. And Deep River Gallery fostered many, many significant art careers. Deep River was a project of Daniel J. Martinez, Rolo Castillo, and Glenn Kino. And it ended up being a launching pad for the established LA art scene for many years afterwards. The most prominent artist who had his very first show at Deep River Gallery in the American Hotel was Mark Bradford, who's gone on to set auction records for an African-American artist. In the bigger picture, though, the American Hotel was certainly cross-pollination. You had homeless people, you had mentally ill people, you had artists, and what really came out of that may not have one tangible art historical thing of importance, but there was this kind of zone of freedom that existed. People visited here. You could probably ask any big artist in LA from a certain time period, did you ever go to Al's Bar? And they did. That to me is the most significant thing. It wasn't that anything happened here, it was that it was here. A lot of people might compare the American Hotel in LA to the Chelsea Hotel in New York. And I think the biggest difference, of course, is that the Chelsea Hotel has many major celebrities who have wild stories that happen there. But I would never want to undersell who the American Hotel housed. I believe in my heart that the American Hotel had as much vitality, creativity, and interesting things going on as the Chelsea Hotel by far. If anything, the Chelsea Hotel ossified into a sort of place where you had to be cool, and once you got there, you didn't have to do anything. Living in the American Hotel was difficult. Very few people moved here for vanity or for glamour. I mean, it was tough living here. The bathrooms are down the hall, okay? The Chelsea Hotel in Manhattan was near the wealth center of New York, whereas in LA, the money's on the west side. Always has been. It's a little different now, but it's still downtown with Skid Row. If the Chelsea Hotel had been built and populated by artists in the Bronx, you have to look at the American Hotel as being in that sort of location relative to the economic geography of Los Angeles. While the Chelsea Hotel is memorialized by famous people who are well-financed, Leonard Cohen has a song, Chelsea Hotel, on a major label. There are many songs written in the American Hotel that are just as intense, passionate, and great, but they just never found the audience via a corporately financed mechanism.
The hotel stands in disrepair. The tenants, they don't seem to care. Rent is cheap and the bulbs are bare. Good light for playing solitaire.
If the American Hotel had somehow magically occurred on the West Side in Santa Monica, my God, this place would be the capital of culture. It's an accident of geography that it might not have the historical allure of some other places, but that doesn't negate the intensity of what went on here. George hadn't evolved with the rest of the world. He had like a little black and white TV, so I'm sure he knew about the moon landing, but I don't know that he was up on anything else. His wife had terrible Alzheimer's, and she eventually died. And he told me that for a while she had been a prostitute. And he said, well, she didn't complete the deal. She would walk around and get a guy to come back to her hotel with her. And so the guy would take off all his clothes, and she'd start on him, and George would burst in with a baseball bat. That's my wife, you son of a bitch. And the guy, of course, would run out naked. They'd get his wallet and pay the rent. He just said that's how you had to make ends meet sometimes. We only had to do it a few times, but when we had to do it, it always worked. Even as old as he was still a big guy. Probably could take care of himself back in the day, no problem. I never saw him without a hat. At the time, you never saw anyone wear that. That was something you saw your grandpa wearing in like 1949. I couldn't tell you if he was bald or had hair on the top of his head because he always had that hat on. He had that gangster vibe to him, you know. You'd come into the hotel, whatever hour, and then he'd just be there mopping the floor real slowly. It was almost like a ghost. He was just so old and silent. Yeah, I see you there, fella. Hey, fella. Good night, fella. And if you had a girl with you, he'd kind of just give you that look like, you're safe with me. When you need to shut up for me, remember, I shut up for you. I might be doing a diamond heist next week. He had a funny name for this guy, and they were going to do a holdup. Then something happened, and he was actually a little relieved that he didn't have to go through with the stick-up job. And I said, you didn't have a gun? And he said, oh, no. Because if you have a gun, you're going to use it. That was his attitude. I met Joel Bloom. He was the bartender at Al's Bar in 1985. You had down-and-out drug addicts, and you had artists. And so there was never any talk of sports at the American Hotel or Al's Bar, except between Joel Bloom and I. I'm an Angels fan, and he was a White Sox fan. Every year, the White Sox would come and play 3 games in Anaheim. And we went to an Angels-White Sox game almost every year from 1986 until the year he died. We went once to a game where the Angels beat the White Sox 19-0. Finally, I felt so much pity on him. We actually had to ditch the fireworks show. It was 17-0 when we left. And we listened on the radio, and the Angels were scoring 2 more runs. Turn it off. And I turned it off. And we drove right by Disneyland, and Disneyland's fireworks were going off right there. He goes, there's your fireworks show. I hope you're happy. And the year he died, I got us Diamond Club seats, and they were like right behind home plate. It was really tough. He was having pain, and yet he was just the epitome of what going to a baseball game was about. When you walk in there, you just forget all the bullshit in the world. It's the healthiest escapism you'll ever find. He told me once, when you meet somebody, ask them what their team is. Next year, ask them what their team is, because that tells you that they have integrity, that they're going to stick with that team whether it's a crappy year or a good year. He stuck with a loser team his whole life. It was his team. And that's what he did with the Arts District. He's the one who named it the Arts District. He believed in this neighborhood and stuck with it. And that's what he did with the White Sox. And, 2 years before he died, the White Sox won it all. He said, I'm going to die happy because I actually saw him win. And he never thought he would live to see him win. The era where this had a vitality to it because it was different than anywhere else you could go, those days are quickly fading. I'm happy with what happened with the Arts District, and it was the vision of Joel Bloom.
I'm optimistic. I think that there can be a thriving arts community here.
He basically said, we could be like the West Side. There's a lot of good things on the West Side we deserve here too. We deserve good stores. We deserve good restaurants. We deserve to be able to park our cars and not have them broken into. He had a faith in things like rent control and old school neighborhood principles. He believed the arts district could function like a little neighborhood that the local people would have control over. But in LA, the minute you can put rich white kids anywhere, you're going to get the developers here to maximize the amount of money. And all of a sudden, it's going to be more like a mall, and it's more like a lot of places you can go. When I lived here, you had to walk to Jail Denny's to get food. The nearest ATM to Al's Bar was the Bank of America in Chinatown, 2 miles away. So there's a lot of conveniences now to live here, to visit here. I would hope that it retains some of its character, but it used to be a lot of experiments and they failed, but they were glorious failures. And now you have these very predictable successes. And hey, look, it's art in the arts district. The rents have skyrocketed. And when your rent was $210 for one light socket, one outlet, a heater that didn't work, a window that was painted shut, and the bathrooms down the hall, $210 a month. They crabbed about it then. Now it's $500 a month. They crab about it now. And now there's nice restaurants downstairs. There wasn't anything downstairs. It's different, and it's not bad. I'm not complaining, but it is different. And that needs to be noticed. You know, somebody goes, oh, I'm in the arts district. I'm an artist. It's like, if you're in the arts district, you have some upper middle class something paying your rent. Either your job, your spouse, your partner, or your parents. One day I was driving and I was speeding. I got pulled over by a cop. And this guy's like, what's the story, man? Why are you in such a hurry? He's, big, intimidating, scary cop. And I said to him, I'm sorry, I'm late for work and my boss is just, he's a pest and today's inventory day and I'm really, really sorry, but I almost want you to give me the ticket so I can prove to him that I'm late because you pulled me over. He's that much of a jerk. And he goes, oh, where do you work? And I said, oh, it's this place downtown, Al's Bar. And all of a sudden, this big, intimidating cop was like, no way, dude! That is the coolest place I ever been to, man! I went there, I seen some bands, man, those were the coolest bands! Me and my bros got so blasted there, I gotta go back! Dude, what nights do you work? I gotta go back! He sat there and told me his Al's Bar stories from having gone there one time. It stuck in his mind as like just the greatest place. I did not get a ticket.
Cut.